Hi there. So this is not really a presentation about onions, but how I use onions as a metaphor when I look at transformation and transformation as the part of the human condition. I'm not even a big fan of raw onions, but I certainly am a big fan of metaphors, as some of you may know. So what I'm presenting is not something that's entirely new, as it is important in my view, and especially as I see it in the clinical world. I spent a lot of time working in the mental health field, especially in crisis, and one of the things that I've seen in that world is that we tend to look at the entire problem because we have the time to. Of course, people present to us with symptoms, the outside of the skin, but our goal is to make ourselves obsolete so that the person is recovered and moves on to an enriched life. However, in my move to the substance abuse world, something I saw that really kind of freaked me out is that there's still sort of this old school look at the exterior problem, and the exterior problem being this person is a blank addict. This is their drug of choice. So we're looking at the skin. We're looking at just the exterior of the onion. And so this is part of our neurological hardwiring, of course. When we are out in the forest, we're looking for threats. When we are looking at people, we immediately study their demographics. It's something that obviously, as part of addiction science, we're focused on, removing the drug from the person. However, I felt as I started doing this work and as I continue doing this work that there's a gap in getting into the context. And of course, we all want people to achieve the best possible potential. And so oftentimes our preconceptions about what those potentials are driven by assumptions of a person's capabilities and that those capabilities fall within certain subsets. And so, we recall all of the things that, a person should be, what they can be, or what they ought to be. We've all heard that phrase, and as teenagers we heard it so many times. You have so much potential, look at you. But then that's the thing that gets us hung up, is that we get hung up on where a person, in our view, is supposed to be, and not entirely where they're at. And where they're supposed to be is often a prepackaged or sociological ideal. And in this field, this is a field where we want to have quick turnarounds. In the substance abuse field, we mark anniversaries, we mark years, days clean. However, we go at it. So we want things to be done, and we want a person to move on. However, in my view, and in the view of a growing number of professionals, we have to go deeper. We have to cut into the onion. We have to go through the layer. But that's painful. It's painful. It's something that we don't like, and in not liking that, it causes problems. In having to cut through those layers, we're going to cry, just like we're cutting an onion. And so our society just, we don't like to, we don't like to be in pain. We don't like to be uncomfortable. So we have a tendency to go for instead of examining, the root causes by going through all the layers and taking all the time, we have the brands. We have the boom. Okay, here you go. Here is the diagnosis. Here is the medication, or here is the recipe that will get you to success. Instead of looking at that person as an individual, and both the clinician and the patient saying, okay, I'm willing to feel some pain. I'm willing to be uncomfortable. I'm willing to move past myself on that. So we have a society, of course, conditioned entirely against discomfort. We don't like discomfort at all. We want to have it our way in 60 seconds or less. I call it, the Burger King brain, and so we gladly accept someone to do all the cutting for us, all the crying for us, all the work for us, and give us the promise of something that's going to work 100% of the time. In our treatment paradigm, substance abuse especially, most people are coming out of, clinical facilities that are providing medical treatment, but are given a path to recovery that is completely non-clinical. And I'm not bashing the 12 steps, but I am saying that, abstinence with the 12 steps only leads to a 17% success rate. When we're investing hundreds of thousands of dollars per individual sometimes, that is not effective. So we need to do some onioning. So onioning 101, as we begin to look at what onioning is, you can see here that we first have to look at what part of the problem of the way we onion as a society our social hang-ups around, how we look at other people, is that we're looking at the surface and not asking ourselves what led up to this point, what led up to the creation of this onion and all of its layers, and that we assume that certain levels of potential based on what we've seen others do, of the result of some sort of transformational process will lead to the same thing for that person, and it's not always true. And also, in examining ourselves or others, the painful experience of revealing layers is uncomfortable. So our low discomfort threshold leads us to choose, shortcuts and that avoid the discomfort, and we don't get to the core of the problem. We accept the prepackaged quick fixes, the diagnoses, the medications, all of those things in all sorts of different varieties. So yeah, of course, I'm making a huge broad generalization here, but what I'm doing is primarily just trying to quickly give you a symbol and something to hold on to as I'm opening up a conversation, hopefully, and a new way of looking at substance abuse care and treatment. And not just substance abuse, mental health, and also social care, how we look and evaluate each other. Now, this isn't just a social problem. This is not just a matter of looking at a symptom by medical professionals or substance abuse professionals, psychologists, whomever, and then giving a prepackaged and recipe to a cure. This is part of a broad philosophical knee-jerk reaction that we have as a society to fixing problems in government, restoring our ecological balance, and finding cultural harmony. So, but in our treatment paradigms, as I've said already, they're symptom driven. We may gather additional context through demographics, through having very in-depth psych interviews, but oftentimes, I think most of that, from what I've seen a lot over the years, that detail gets thrown out, and we need that detail. So we go back to the moment at hand. What is the presenting problem versus how did it start and where did it come from? I experienced this even so when I went into therapy. So we're not getting deep. So then, we are satisfied briefly. Our dopamine gets hit briefly with this high of, okay, this new medication seems to be working for me. Taking the introspective walk around the lake a few times is working for me, or going to this meeting for a few times a week is working for me. But did we get to the point of where the problem came from? And oftentimes it's not. So, we get this big, juicy, reveal of, this is a, big, fat, bloomin' onion of joy. And yet we've not really had the opportunity to get where we need to go with, the diving deeper. And those of you who know me, and you know me well, that's where I live. I swim in the deep end of the pool, and I'm not saying that this is my way or the highway or anything like that, or this is the perfect way to do it. I'm making a broad generalization, but what I have seen when we take the time and we go slow, and we not focus on certain landmarks of time, arbitrary timelines of, you must be X, Y, or Z by 45 days, but setting simple goals that are driven individually by that person, and also through the context of gaining information about their whole life. So otherwise you're just going to come back right around to the exact same problem. There are others that are beginning to recognize this, that if you're not getting to the core of the problem, that you're going to, this is, through tons of studies and lots of scientific evidence, it's shown that people just return back, whether it's through relapse rates or what have you. It all goes back, and we just can't have that. We're in this field to change it. So thank you for bearing with me as I muddle through this, because I have a cold and I've got a cat that's walking all over the microphone and the paperwork and the slideshow. I don't even know sort of where I am, but we're going to move on here. We're going to move on here to this for me is the most important slide, because this drives my philosophy. Let's work through the layers, and let's begin at the core. Let's begin by asking questions, just like they make fun of in the cartoons. Tell me about your childhood. For real though, tell me about the conditions of 0 to 3 years old, where most of your perceptions are formed. We know that is true. Tell me about your very early life. Tell me about where you established and how you established your emotional norms, what your adolescence was like, and where your social identity was formed, how it was formed. As you became a young adult, how did you feel that your productivity matched up to the expected norms? If the person's comfortable in talking about intimacy, that should be absolutely a person-led conversation, not a clinician-led conversation. But if they open up about it, then that's great. But they may reveal that, they had a hard time relating to other people, but then, we're working with adults, an adult population. So, do they feel a sense of worthiness? Do they feel a sense of meaningfulness? And meaningfulness is crucial. Without a sense of meaningfulness or a sense of purposefulness here, in the world, then we're going to struggle, and we're going to revert back to the things that we know. You can see there the quote from Dr. Gabor Mate that mental illness, addiction, and most illness is linked to childhood trauma and loss, and that's why the core of the onion is so important. But there's more, because I want to know about the roots. As we think about Maslow's hierarchy and the very base of the pyramid, tell me about how far down did those roots go in terms of security, in terms of building trust and establishing trust? Because if you don't have that, you don't move up, or your upward moves are extremely awkward. So from the roots, we can learn a lot. We can learn a lot about the surrounding soil, the ground, the origin story of the person, and that has come to you for help. Why not find out about that surrounding environment and that rich and fertile soil, or maybe not that rich and fertile soil, that potentially salted soil. The soil, it represents, in my view, the family, the extended family, everything that has gone into the creation of that individual. So, all of the systems in place. Maybe that person went through, and sometimes you don't find this out until much later, that person went through foster care after foster care and then became adopted. Oh wait, wow, really? That's not neuropsychosocial. But it should be, for crying out loud. But we need to have those things. We need to have that kind of knowledge. So let me just put that question out there. What would it be like if we began to see people as an onion, as the result of an ongoing process? So, okay, maybe not these two, right? But this. What if we looked at refugees, those in cycles of poverty, addiction, violence, and its victims? Those whose lives are caught up in systemic incarceration as onions, as processes, as expressions of creation, no matter what, no matter who they are, no matter what they did, no matter how they live their lives, no matter how they have presented to you, no matter what behaviors they have in your program. What if we looked at them as a system? Onioning is a simple process to broaden perspectives when managing situations, solving problems, examining systems, and also for checking your own self out. Look at your own world. Look at how you came to be. Now, I did not get inspired from this just from my own brain or because I had a dream, but because this is a movement. This is a movement that's expressing itself through lots of great thinkers and people who are using evidence-based practice to demonstrate why depth and gaining depth in providing care is really important. So, Dr. Gabor Mate, I'm just going to read this straight out. Unwittingly, we write the story of our future from narratives based on the past. Mindful awareness can bring into consciousness these hidden, past-based perspectives so that they no longer frame our worldview. Choice begins with the moment you disidentify from the mind and its conditioned patterns. Boom, chaka chaka, boom. That is so important. Unwittingly, we write the story of our future from narratives based on the past. It's just like I've said all along about anxiety. Anxiety is a future-based condition that is entirely conditioned by the past. Very little true anxiety has to do with the present moment. So what Dr. Gabor Mate and people like him are talking about, they're talking about the past. They're talking about getting to the root of the onion. So, onioning for everybody. Pausing. When you have the opportunity to do some onioning, pause. If you have a client that's in front of you, so maybe it's somebody new, or someone is coming to you with a problem, you just don't have to immediately respond. You're not a lizard. Examine the big picture. What is the present expression and that you can mutually agree on? What's presently happening? Evaluate as much as you can by asking historical questions without presuming anything. Don't have your own roadmap there, guys. And listen first and always with mindfulness and begin at the beginning. So that's peel, and then we're going to verb this thing out. Invest in outcomes. Whatever is happening, your care shapes potential destinations. It can't make them. And make no promises with whomever you're working with. Nourish the surroundings. That means pull in all the collaterals. This may be old news, but if we're going to dig deep, we need everyone on board. So everyone that makes up the soil is part of the solution, whether they know it or not. And then grasp every chance you get to go deeper every day. It's great practice for onioning when you really need it. Onion in the grocery store. Somebody says, I had this conversation the other day. Actually, I was at a grocery store picking up cat food, and cashier's like, "It's been a really weird day." And I said, "Well, that's pretty weird times, isn't it?" And we got into like a 2-minute conversation. It was nice because didn't really get to talk about politics. It's just like the world is weird, and that was cool. We bridged a nice little gap out there. So yeah, the other thing about onioning, you're gonna have to cut through the onion. You got to cut through the layers. You'll probably cry, but this is in refutation of a prepackaged way of looking at people and a prepackaged society. If you feel, you heal, said Robert Downey Sr., not Jr., his dad, in a film, very strange film. But if you feel, you heal. And we need to feel. We need to feel it all.